Well, good Sunday morning. Hope you had a great week last week and are off to a good start this week. And welcome to another episode of the I Am Statements of Jesus. Well, in the Gospel of John, in what we know as chapter 9, John has recorded a story about Jesus healing a man who had been born blind. And you may be familiar with the story, but Jesus heals him. And when his neighbors see the man, they say, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" But others were saying, "No, but he likes him. He looks like him." And he kept saying, "I am the man." And they said, "Well, then how were your eyes opened?" And he said, "Well, the man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed and received my sight." And they said, "Well, where is he?" And he says, "I don't know." So they bring the man to the Pharisees and they tell the Pharisees the story. And the Pharisees ask him, how he had received his sight. And so he tells them. And the Pharisee says, "Well, obviously, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath," because it was the Sabbath day that Jesus healed the man. And so other people were saying, "Well, how can a man who is a sinner do such things?" And so there arose this great discussion about Jesus and could he really be the Son of God? And the Pharisees were going, "No, he can't be, because again, he healed on the Sabbath and he doesn't keep the Sabbath. So obviously he's not from God." And so they asked him again the third time. And he says in verse 30, "Why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." And the Pharisees answer him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" So they cast him out. And Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And the man answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" And Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." And the man said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped him. And some of the Pharisees heard it, and they said, "So are we also blind?" And Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say, 'We see,' your guilt remains." And the conversation continues into chapter 10, where Jesus says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." And then John adds that this was a figure of speech that Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So Jesus claims to be the door of the sheepfold, the door of the sheep, and they don't get it. So in verse 7, Jesus says to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." And we're going to stop right there and pick up next week, the good Lord willing. But I want to focus on again that "I am" statement, where Jesus says, "I am the door." He says it in verse 9, and then again he says it in verse 8. In verse 7 and verse 9. Sorry about that. I am the door. Well, what's he talking about? Well, there's had just been this great discussion about who Jesus is. Is he really the Messiah? Is he really who he claims to be? And people were saying, no, no, he's not. And again, especially the Pharisees, no, he's not, because he's not keeping the Sabbath law. But the other people were saying, including the man who was healed, well, he's got to be from God because he healed me. He gave me my sight back. And it has never been heard that anybody has ever done that. And so there was obviously, and this is not the only time, but ever since Jesus claimed to be the Messiah, there were discussions about whether or not he really was the Messiah. And again, as you know, the Messiah had been promised for hundreds or thousands of years. The Jews were expecting him. Jesus shows up and claims to be the Messiah. He was not the first one to claim to be the Messiah, but again, he claims to be the Messiah, but he's not the Messiah that they were expecting. And so many of the Jews just couldn't bring themselves to accept the fact that Jesus really was the Messiah, even after having seen all of these signs and wonders and miracles that Jesus had performed. And so he tries to clarify that, if you will. He tries with this figure of speech to give them another example that they could take and come to the conclusion that he really was the Messiah. He says, I'm the door. Everybody who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep didn't listen to him. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. So what's he talking about? Well, at some point in our lives, most of us, if not all of us, have wondered why we're here, what it is we're supposed to be doing, what life is all about. And the answer to those questions is found in Jesus. And I know that that may sound simplistic, but it's the truth. In verse 10, Jesus says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Jesus knows what life on this earth is all about because he's the door. He's the door to life. And next week, we're going to talk about the I am statement, I am the good shepherd. But he's the door. Jesus is the door. If you're wondering why you're here, if you're wondering what life is all about, because trust me, we get a lot of different signals. We get a lot of different messages about what life is about. We've been told, those of us who were born and raised here in America, at least in my generation, that the great American dream was to get a good education, get a good high school education, go to college, get a good college education, graduate, get a job, get married, buy a house, have children, work somewhere for 30 to 35 years, retire, and take it easy. That's the American dream that I grew up with. You can't find that in the scriptures, or at least I haven't been able to. That's not what life is about. We've been told that he who dies with the most toys wins. We've been told that what life is all about is to get everything you can get while you can get it. We've been told that what life is about is doing whatever it is that we want. After all, it's my life, it's my body, and I can do with my life and I can do with my body whatever I want. We've been bombarded with various messages about what life is all about. And what Jesus says is that all of those messages that came before him are designed, if you will, to kill us and destroy us. But that Jesus came so that we may have life and may have it abundantly. So if you want to know what life is all about, go to the door. And the door is Jesus, the one who loved us enough to leave heaven, come to this earth in the form of a man, become a servant, and then give up his life for us, because he is the door. Well, I pray that you'll have a great week.